Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boys from For Those With Good Taste. I'm Matt. That's Lenny.
Yo.
And welcome back to the channel. Before we get into today's episode, we'd like to welcome a very special guest onto the show. You want to introduce yourself?
Hey, y'all. I'm D.
Big dog.
Big dog DeAngelo.
Just D is fine.
Okay.
All right, I guess we won't go with a nickname.
First names only today.
This is like an improv class. You don't say no, you kind of just go with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so
yeah. D is my nickname.
we don't have a lot of rules, but a longer nickname is a must.
D is my nickname.
We'll get back to that.
So
We've got quite the episode today. So not only do we have a special guest, we have a great event that we're going to be covering today. And it really, for the casual fan, that's really why we bring DeAngelo into the equation, help get some perspective on a very highly anticipated UFC 253 event where we have Israel Stylebender Adesanya.
Do you feel like that's an insult calling you a casual fan?
Slightly.
Yeah, it
Slightly.
sounded like it.
It sounded like a real backhanded thing. That's why you bring the casual fan. Like, come on, bro.
Well, I thought you brought a casual perspective. How many events would you say that you've caught in the last month?
The last month, 3.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's a bad question.
Yeah.
He's
Really?
been hitting me for the link.
Cosign.
There we go. So I'm okay with being wrong. I'm oftentimes wrong all the time on this show. So we won't register you as a casual viewer.
Appreciate
You're more wrong than I am half the time, but we won't go there.
Half the time I'm wrong all the time.
100% of the time it works, 50% of the time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying. Anyway, DeAngelo, we got Israel Stylebender Adesanya versus Paulo Costa.
Dude,
Good job.
you have been. That's the best enunciation you've given on this.
That's a good job.
Oh, I
Wow.
came prepared.
That's a good job.
I am really ready for this fight. I wanted to make sure I got all the pronunciations
I'm
correct.
blown away.
We're coming in hot today.
I'm impressed with myself. Not gonna lie.
How do you feel about this fight?
As a casual fan, I'm really, really excited. Stylebender to me is the most electrifying, the most entertaining fighter that's out right now. Openly admit that I'm not someone who watches every fight, every weekend, all those things. But for me, definitely a big draw. I'm excited. Can't wait to watch.
Do you, how have you felt watching? You've been watching more recently, and I actually said this last week that I thought it was interesting that if you weren't a big fan of MMA, coming into the pandemic, I think this is like the best time to have become a fan of MMA because of the fact that the events have just been so good one after the other. And I think last weekend's actually ended up being kind of a downer in some ways, the main event to me.
Right.
In comparison to what we've been given the last couple
Yeah.
of weeks, right? We've been kind of spoiled with some really good main events lately.
But how have you felt about the atmosphere watching recently, and especially with other sports coming back since then?
For me, I think I'll be in the minority on this one. It's not that big of an issue for me. Like, having the fans on TV versus any other sport for anything, it didn't really make a difference for me. I was just happy to actually have some sporting event back on the TV. I do think it added, for extra pressure or extra intensity for the actual athletes, but as a watcher, doesn't affect my watching experience too much.
What about some of the other sports? So we've got football back now.
Yep.
How are you taking? We've had basketball playoffs for quite some time. How have you taken in those sports without fans? How's that working out for you?
Big basketball fan, huge basketball fan. I think that Adam Silver is the most provocative, sort of like,
It's nasty.
huh?
That's it. No. I said that. I said that's nasty.
That might,
Yeah.
He's ahead of
progressive.
progressive.
I would call him progressive.
That's the better word. He's
Yeah,
progressive. He's very progressive, and I think that him taking the stance of pumping fake crowd noise in, as a fan at home, it works for me. Same thing with the NFL. I know some teams are letting fans in, some aren't. But pumping that fake crowd noise, it feels like just as well anybody in there anyway. You play with some camera angles, I don't know who's in there. I don't care.
I am glad with MMA that they're not doing the fake crowd noise. They're the one sport that's kind of stayed away from it.
Yeah.
And I think it lends itself really well to their environment to do that.
Yeah.
Has it made it easier for you to understand the sport? Not that you didn't before, but like there's like technical aspects that when there's fans and stuff, I think pull you out of those things and you're really like going with the flow of that.
Yeah, now you actually hear athletes trainers, and you hear the people that are actually ringside talking. You hear them telling people how to move out, keep your guard up, things like that. So for me, I think it's really cool. I think it's a good addition for sure.
I think especially on the ground, it's been great. And I think I have a fairly good grasp at this point of what's going on at all phases of the sport. But even there, I find it more interesting being like a nerdy fan and being able to hear these coaches that you hear how great they are, but even understand more of how they interact from the corner.
I watch a barbaric sport for it to be barbaric. I'm just keeping it real with you. If you get punched in the face, I want to hear you get punched in the face, bro. I want to hear it.
If you get kicked in the head, I want to hear every aspect of it.
Even it does make you appreciate when like a stiff like head kick, even if it's like blocked on the guard, and you hear like the crack come off of it, or like a body shot, like the slap of somebody's like shin on their stomach.
I really start to appreciate leg kicks a lot more. There was a body kick, and for the life of me, I can't remember who it was this past weekend, but there was a body kick that landed, and it kind of made my ear ring because I had the TV really loud, and I was like, ooh, can imagine how that felt.
Yeah.
Definitely not a good instance.
I was watching the NBA last night, and it was the Lakers game, right? And there was a point where Dwight Howard blocked somebody, and he like gets like pumped up, and the announcers happen to mention in the environment now, and I think MMA is very similar to this, that you have to manufacture that energy, right?
Sure.
And that's why MMA to me has been really interesting, because there's those guys. There was a fight last weekend in the corner. He went into the corner. He was like, I'm just not here for it. Like, I can't get myself up. And they were like, no, you can do it. He's been a coach of him for a long time. He's like, no, you can do it. We've been here. You've got to just turn it on, like, after the first round. And it was very, like, similar there between the two sports, that it's like, there's the fans drive so much of the energy, and like a big dunk is going to really, like, turn something around for a team. And I think a team like the Celtics have really benefited from that lack of crowd energy. And really, I think it's to even some playing fields for a veteran MMA fighter. I feel like it's going to make it a lot easier to stay level-headed and not get caught up in something.
Well, you've heard it on, I think I've heard it on First Take. I've seen it on SportsCenter. Like, people have talked about this being like the most incredible season of basketball. Like, as far as like playing the game of basketball, like we've had some really interesting games. We've had some really good comebacks. To me, when I look at an experience that we're not used to seeing without fans, I just like being able to hear Carmelo Anthony say, "Get the fuck up out of here" every time he gets a rebound.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
Happens 3 times a game.
And he knows, he's one of those players that brings that energy all the time. So it is interesting that when you bring up, if the crowd, adrenaline rush isn't there, are the fighters actually showing up for it? And we've seen it in a couple of instances with MMA. But it always brings me back to the Ultimate Fighter days, where we were able to get that inside scoop to what's behind a fighter's thought process. Is he sticking to a game plan? Is he listening to his coaches? And we really get to see that with some of the bigger fighters. I think it was Donald Cerrone, Nico Price, where every time Donald's corner would shout something to him, Nico was like yelling over them and just getting really pumped up. And that guy's a psycho. But shout out to Nico Price. It's a really interesting experience, and I kind of feel like this event with Stylebender versus Costa, I kind of wish it had some fans. I don't know. How you guys feel about that?
You think that hurts Izzy?
Not that I think it hurts Izzy. Izzy's a guy who he said in the middle of an octagon that he's ready to die in here. I think he's going to be ready to show up any day. But I do think that this is going to be a fight where, if it is everything that it's stocked up to be, where there's going to be a lot of back and forth, man, it would be great to really see the fans appreciate those fights. And I think that's what we've kind of missed out on from, not necessarily missed out on, but all these great main events that we've gotten over the last couple of weeks. There's just one missing element. It's a great fight. It has everything that we thought it would, but it's just missing that explosiveness of the fans. But I guess I'm okay with not having them, but I think this fight, I kind of wish it would.
I'm on the flip side of that, buddy.
Share.
I think it hurts Izzy by not having fans more than it hurt Costa. Just from the showman that Izzy is, just off of how he feeds off the crowd's energy. For me, people either, how I see it, and I completely could be wrong, but I think people either love to hate Izzy or people love Izzy. So when he's going in there, he's in that octagon, he's feeding off that crowd energy, he's feeding off that, not to take anything away from his fighting style or his performance at all, but I think that not having fans it's a little bit of a chink.
I don't necessarily agree either way. I think Izzy's got significantly more fights, right? So to
That's my
me,
point.
he's not going to have an issue showing up on the day. I don't really think he'll have a problem with that. His issue is more so going to be he fights to his opponent. And his style is going to be a little bit more dictated on what kind of Costa shows up, and we'll get into that. But as far as this specific thing, it's interesting to me with Paulo Costa. I mean, he's a relatively young fighter. He's only 13-0. He had some fights on the Ultimate Fighter as well, so maybe he's 17-0, or we're like, well, no, he lost on the Ultimate Fighter.
Lost on the Ultimate Fighter.
Lost on the Ultimate Fighter to the decision.
Luckily, those are exhibitions.
Yeah, so he's undefeated in his actual professional career, but he doesn't have a ton of fights, whereas Adesanya has been kickboxing long before he was ever an MMA fighter, and now he's had championship experience. So I think it could affect Costa a little bit more, but I don't see it playing a huge issue.
So let's set up the background for this big main event. Both of these guys are completely at the top of their game. Both of them are undefeated. Adesanya is 19-0, coming off of big wins over Yoel Romero, Robert Whittaker, Kelvin Gastelum, and the always crowd favorite Anderson Silva.
OG.
When we look at that resume and we compare it to Paulo Costa, who's coming in here at 13-0, common opponent in Yoel Romero, wins via unanimous decision. Then we've got Uriah Hall, Johnny Hendricks, and Oluwale Bambose. Yeah, I worked on that one as well. Yep, your boy's coming in hot.
You researched. We're finally showing off a little research in this room.
How to pronounce Oluwale.
Bambose. There's a G in there, so you got to be sly.
I hear you.
But the resume, although they have a common opponent, I see two opponents here, Uriah Hall and Johnny Hendricks, that Paulo Costa fought them at a much, let's not say later time in their career, but he's fighting them. I mean, Uriah Hall...
I don't think you're right on Uriah Hall, man. Johnny Hendricks, he was his last
Johnny
fight,
Hendricks was on the last, sure.
But Uriah Hall, I have to say, is still in his, not his prime or anything, but he's still a capable fighter.
We'll say capable.
Okay.
I don't want to disrespect him, but Uriah Hall has always been one of those...
He shows up sometimes.
You're wondering who's showing up.
That's fair, but I don't think it's fair to say you made it sound like he's an older fighter. I just think he's still in his early to mid 30s. I believe I could be wrong.
I guess I'm speaking about it in the way of where their careers are. I would definitely say he's at the twilight of his career. Would you see him fighting for a title anytime soon?
I don't think he's necessarily going to fight for a title, but that does not mean they're always. He might just not be skilled enough to fight for a title. And that's because he can't show up every single time he goes out there. Okay. I think that's a fight that is tailor-made to Paulo Costa because of the fact that Uriah Hall is a good hammer, but he is okay with sometimes being the nail.
Very nice reference.
Thanks, dude.
How do you feel about that, D?
The reference is pretty profound.
Not necessarily the reference. As being the caliber fan that you are, when you look at both of these guys' records, how familiar are you with Paulo Costa?
Not very familiar in his former fights. In the last two, I saw the highlights for Uriah Hall, and I did watch versus Romero.
Romero was a hell of a fight.
It's a great fight.
Yeah, I'll close on that.
I watched that actually again today in preparation for this, and that fight's really good. But Paulo Costa didn't win. So
I was just about to ask you, who did you feel won that fight? And I guess I have my answer there.
It's okay that Costa got the decision, but to me it was a Yoel Romero victory, and he's another one. It felt like that's where I think I took some issue with the Uriah Hall jab, because I think Yoel Romero is kind of the same guy at times, where he's a step above in terms of talent. Sure. But he doesn't necessarily always show up, and I think the Adesanya fight right after the Costa fight is a good indicator of that, because that was a very, very boring fight.
I'm not really prone to seeing Yoel Romero is known for being explosive. Yeah. He's known for being extremely athletic. Everybody talks about it.
Uriah Hall.
If you watch his fights, he's only really active for about a minute of every round.
Until the later rounds.
Until the later rounds where he feels like he's behind.
With the Costa fight being a very big exception to this rule.
And I feel like that was because Paulo Costa at times was coming forward and getting him out of his comfort zone. Because right after that, Yoel Romero goes up against Israel Adesanya and says that Israel's running away, where in all actuality, Yoel just didn't really do enough to engage the fight.
Well, who's that on at some point, though? Because it is Adesanya's job to give the fans a show, right? And if your opponent is not going to be willing to show up, you as the champion, I do think, hold some liability here, or culpability maybe.
Culpability, sure.
To dictate that fight a little bit more. And what you had was two guys that were looking in a mirror a lot of the time to me.
Sure. D, you had a surprise reaction there.
I feel a little bit differently. As a champion, I'm the champion for a reason, and you're coming to
take it from me.
You're coming to take it from me. Sure. If we're in a fight, via my man Floyd Mayweather, the plan is to hit you and not get hit. So I don't give a shit what you do. No. If you want to be boring in there, that's on you. It's not up to me to give the fans a show. In some capacity, sure, but in the other capacity, I want to walk out here healthy, and I want to walk out here the champion. I want to walk out here healthy.
Well, so I think you're 100% right in that it was a very Floyd Mayweather-esque performance. I heard the stat today that in Costa's fight versus Romero, he absorbed 100 and I think it was like 40-something significant strikes to win that fight over 3 rounds. Adesanya took 30 significant strikes, or like 28 over 5. So I do agree in the sense that he came out of there unscathed, and good for him. But I also feel that when you're on the upward trajectory that he is on, a guy like John Jones that he frequently would call out, in his point in his career that Adesanya's at, was getting shit done.
Fair.
And maybe he was winning by decision, but those were dominant, like...
Different strokes for different folks, though.
Sure.
If we look at his last 5, there's 2 decisions. There's the Anderson Silva fight, and there's the Yoel Romero fight.
There's also the Gastelum.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Kelvin Gastelum. I felt like he finished Gastelum.
No, that was the fight of the year.
Okay, so if you look at the 2 performances that Adesanya's coming off of, going into that Yoel Romero fight, he put it all out on the line. Yeah, that Gastelum fight, if I'm not mistaken, should have won fight of the year if it didn't.
It did.
Then he goes into that Robert Whittaker fight, eats a couple of really big punches, and comes back and finishes him. Yes, there's the constant video of, I thought I didn't have power. Fantastic. Then he goes into that Romero fight.
As far as the power thing, did you know he's only across like his kickboxing career, and now I think it's like he's finished under 30% of his fights.
He's not a big finisher.
Yeah.
He's not a big finisher, and he wasn't a big finisher early on in the UFC. I mean, he beat guys like Brad Tavares by outstanding fashion, but he was never known as being this guy who had huge knockout power. If he was going to put you down, he's doing it with consistent
precision,
shots.
Right?
Yeah.
Precision. And he needs... The reason this fight, I guess, is interesting is stylistically, right? Because to me... If Costa and Adesanya fight the way that we've seen them fight throughout their careers, in the UFC at least, Costa's going to push forward and try to get him against the cage. And the thing is, outside of Uriah Hall, I don't think he's fought anybody with good actual footwork for MMA. Yoel Romero has great trunk movement for MMA. Like, beautiful trunk movement.
Really good trunk movement?
Some of the best trunk movement I've ever seen in MMA.
Yo, fam.
Someone's uncomfortable with the word trunk.
Yeah, let's. I don't really want to talk about
Yoel Romero's trunk movement aside,
it was a lot of it. He had a lot of trunk movement.
It's a difference maker.
Yeah, his
and
trunk.
I do think that it stifled Israel in a sense.
The trunk movement?
When you've got a trunk moving like that in front of you, it gets a little bit difficult to stick to your game plan. But I think to D's point, he had the game plan of, I'm going to come away with this win. This is a very aggressive and powerful fighter. Let me see if I can get through this.
I was mentioning Costa in reference to this, right? So Adesanya has fantastic footwork, right? He's not just gonna get to the cage and then roll with punches like we saw Yoel Romero being very willing to do in that Adesanya fight. So I think when he goes to get him to the cage, he's going to have some issues. And I heard Bull in the Matador, I believe Adesanya said something like that. And that's what I probably see him thinking it's going to be a lot like.
So, me leaning on you guys, would you say that, from everything you just said, piggybacking off of that, would you say that Izzy is the more technically sound fighter?
Absolutely.
Without 100%. 100%. Not to say, like, Costa has really good striking.
For sure.
He works the body well. He throws a lot of strikes, but the thing that they pointed out with the Yoel Romero fight is the reason he wasn't having a lot of success is because Romero knew it was going to be left, right. Like, there was never going to be a change in that rhythm.
And he knew where it was coming from.
Yeah,
It's always coming from down low.
So he was able to just parry both sides in rhythm like you would if you were training, right? He's just parrying in rhythm and not really eating any of those shots. And when you're the stamina level that Costa has, it's really impressive for the size that he's at. But at some point, that's going to wear on you when some guy's coming back and still hitting you, and you're not really putting him down the way that you think you should.
Yeah. And not a lot of occasions where Yoel Romero is the smaller guy in a fight. Yeah. Botticini is huge.
Yes,
the guy's got some muscles.
That's going to be a factor here. I mean, the size difference is quite big. I mean, Adesanya has shown that he can take a punch, but he got rocked by Gastelum.
True.
Yeah.
True.
That's going to be the most similar fight, I think, of all the ones that have happened. Is Gastelum Izzy to Costa Izzy?
That's a great kind of parallel to make, because if I look at Costa's striking, he is a good striker. He's focusing on power, and it's always either coming from the hips, but you know where it's going to go. It's either going to go that 1-2 route if he ends up going to the body. Adesanya brings a completely different arsenal, and I think that Calvin Gastelum always had the benefit of being able to rely on his wrestling, so to speak. Even though there wasn't a ton of wrestling in that fight, there was some grappling exchanges where he was able to come away with uppercuts and hooks. Costa, I don't know if he's going to want to engage in the clinch so much. In a lot of the shots that he landed against Yoel Romero, there's the gif of Yoel Romero parrying shots, and then he takes that head kick because he leans in the wrong way. Those were big power shots, and if Izzy gets caught with one, yes, it's going to be a problem. But he's shown that he's got the footwork and the head movement, the trunk movement, to not get caught in that type of battle.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think the comparison with Kelvin Gastelum comes from the fact that they are both primarily boxers, right? They both fight in... The difference being Kelvin's more willing to fight in the middle of the cage versus Paulo wants to put you right up on
Calvin's
the cage.
also not throwing a ton of power shots. He's throwing power, but he's mixing it with... He's mixing the 1-2 combinations that he was landing in that fight.
He puts him down with a beautiful left hook in the first round. That's not... If it was actually like... He was an arm punch. It wasn't from
no power.
Hip and puts him down.
Right.
So I think... And I watched the fight today also. So that's where I remember the commentary specifically... Rogan saying like after that one, like the power on that punch. So I think he has pop. He's knocked out some guys along the way. Bisping, Tim Kennedy. They were later in their career, but knocked him out.
I don't want you to mistake what I'm saying. It's not that he's not always throwing big shots to finish a fight. He's more volume and power. And the difference for me there is that Costa's a lot of power.
He's a ton of volume too, though. I mean, he's an avalanche for the first two rounds. He's gonna come at you. It's gonna
China stop, bull in the China shop style.
I think that it's what strategy Costa shows up with. Is he willing to fight back a little bit? Because if he comes out a million miles an hour in the first round, he's going to diagnose every single thing that he's doing. And I think by the third round, it's going to be over. Not like finished wise, but I think he'll just start running away with the fight.
Okay. Are you locking? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Whereas for Costa, if he plays back a little and does maybe come out with a different strategy that could play to his benefit a little bit, other than that, his cardio is the only thing that's going to come into play here. Can he get it done? That last fight was the first time he's gone past 7 minutes in a fight.
Which is pretty insane.
He's never even been booked for a 5-round fight.
Interesting. That plays a factor.
That's huge. That's huge. Right? So to me, that's the biggest thing is inexperience. And we've looked at fights recently. Alistair Overeem, Michelle Watterson, these people who have been around the game for a long time, and their best rounds are rounds 3 through 5, right? Yeah. This guy's the first time going to round 3 outside of the fight he lost in the Ultimate Fighter
was the Yoel Romero fight.
In a fight that we would say he probably lost because he couldn't keep up in the third round.
Yeah.
If that happens in this fight, which this is, if you want my pick, this is what I assume is going to happen. Is he cannot keep that cardio up, and he probably looks good, and there's some exciting flurries for the first couple rounds, but Izzy does know how to roll with punches.
For sure.
He might get rocked a little bit, but he's been in there for a long time, and I just think he's seen everything that Costa can bring at him unless he does something different. So I don't think he's smart enough. Or he might be too egocentric, because guys that typically are buffed up like that, whatever, steroided up like that, are going to have an ego about them, right?
Bold accusation, my friend.
Sure, Adesanya said he was going to pop him before you started. So, so that's my pick. Adesanya, either late finish or decision. We don't have the odds for the over/under, but I'd assume I'm taking the over.
Okay.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm short and sweet. Izzy all the way by decision.
I don't think we saw that.
Yeah, I mean,
going any differently.
Predictable. I'm a fan. I just stylistically, technically, I just don't think Costa can hang, bro.
How do you think it's gonna end?
I got it by decision.
You got it by decision?
Yeah, I don't think Izzy knocks him out.
Okay.
No.
Can I hedge? No. All right, I won't hedge.
No.
I think I've gone against you these last couple of weeks in picking the veterans because I always felt like at some point they've got to get to the other side of the hill. And I do think that that's way too soon in the case of Israel Adesanya. I do think that this is his division. I think it's going to be his division for quite some time. I do think this is going to be a very difficult fight for him. And if he can weather that early first, second round storm, he'll come away with a win. But getting through that first and second round, it's going to be hell.
It ain't cake.
It is going to be hell.
It's not cake.
I think it's probably going to be one of the biggest tests that he's faced. It's definitely one of the biggest guys that he's faced. It gets interesting, but I got Adesanya. I got him taking it in the fourth if I can pick around. I think if he does end up winning it, I think the volume just simply takes over Paulo, and Paulo's just not able to knock it out.
You got to finish.
So I'm taking Israel Adesanya.
Yeah. So we have a clean sweep for Israel. Everybody make sure to check out the fights. Keep an eye out. Give us your picks. All that good shit. Like, comment, subscribe down below, right, Matt?
Or up above.
Maybe we'll put something there or here.
Or
maybe
we'll put
it'll
it
be
over there.
over DeAngelo, right in the middle.
Put it right in the front.
Big Dog D, right over him.
Well, make sure to check out the event, guys. Come back here. Check us out next time. We'll be seeing you guys soon.
Yep. We out. Later.